All right, let's dive into this then, shall we?
Yes.
Do One is now out into the world, a positive song for negative people, as it were. Tell me about Do One.
Well, so do one. I mean, first of all, I'm very stoked that it's out in the world. I'm curious as to whether or not the joke of the title translates into other parts of the world. In English, in London English, let's say, do one is a kind of. I'm trying to think of a radio friendly way. It means go away. It means um, f off essentially. But of
Yes.
course, it's also a song that oh, all right, mate, do one, yeah. But of course, it's also a song that has the word "do" prominently in the title, so there's a gag in there. Anyway, it's a song. It's a defiant song. I mean, it's a song about kind of self belief and that kind of thing. But I think it has a bit more kind of like. Grit and dirt under its fingernails than many of my previous songs. It's kind of an FU song in places, which I enjoy.
I think that we need that though, because certainly in the last couple of records, there has been maybe a theme of like your songs feel like, to me anyway, someone just sort of putting their arm around you and saying, I know that the world's on fire and people are terrible, but it really is gonna be okay. And as the
Sure.
world continues to get more
Oh
terrible,
yeah.
there
Yes,
needs to be a little more grit to the
totally. As
positivity.
as the optimists among us kind of continue to be disappointed by the direction of travel of the world in general, which is very much where I am in life. Yeah, and I mean, I feel like I've kind of earned the right to kind of say screw you to various people in the world who have doubted what I do pretty methodically and consistently over the years and all the rest of it. And hey, you know what? It's album 10. I'm still here. So I win. Do you know what I mean? And like there's a degree of that. And it's hopefully it's not overly bitter, but at the same time, like punk rock is full of examples of great screw you songs, and I'm hopefully I'm adding to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we go all the way back to Love Irene Song, like you said in that, punk rock didn't live up to what I'd hoped that it would be. And I think truly, I remember hearing that lyric for the first time and going, yeah, I agree. Where is it? Like where it hasn't done it. And I really truly believe that you have helped it live up to what it can be, because I truly mean that, because these songs are defiant, but they're also inclusive. And when you go to a Frank Turner show, it really creates a community. And that's what the core of punk rock is.
Sure. I mean, well, I'm going to start by saying that might be the highest praise I've received in 2024, at any rate. Thanks very much, man. I mean, that's very, very kind of you to say. It's funny, like I grew up. I started listening to punk rock records. I didn't know anybody else who liked punk rock, and then I kind of discovered that there was an underground DIY punk rock scene in London, and went to shows, and it blew my mind. It was like, my God, this isn't just in history books. This is real. And then, of course, in reality, it got cliquey, it got sceney. It wasn't quite the magic thing I wanted it to be. Fast forward to, many years to actually it was at the first Lost Evenings festival we did in London in 2017. One of my best friends, who has been a friend of mine since back then, kind of looked around the event and then looked at me and he said, I know what you're doing, you swine. He said you're trying to recreate the sort of idyllic platonic ideal of what you thought punk rock was supposed to be when you were a kid that disappointed you because real life sucks, and that's all that you're trying to do with this festival. And I said, yeah, guilty as charged. I mean, I think that, like, at this point in my life, I've kind of reached a spot where it's like I put out records that are me, and like other people may want to spend their life arguing about whether or not they're quote unquote punk or not. I don't really care at this point. But we're both with what I do, with the tours that I do, with the festival and all the rest of it. Like, there's so much good new punk rock music coming through right now, and like to be associated with that or to even facilitate some of that coming through is a privilege, and that's where I'm kind of sitting these days.
And as we speak of the Lost Evenings tour, you're bringing it to Toronto.
Yes, I am, finally. And all my Canadian friends
September.
thought I was just being nice when I said it was going to finally come to Canada, but I wasn't. It is coming through, and I'm so stoked about it. And we are very close to announcing the kind of support bill for the main stage, and it's awesome, and I'm stoked. And there's lots and lots of amazing Canadian bands who are going to be there, awesome. And Canadian singers. Also some international people. It's going to be amazing. Like, and last year's Lost Evenings in Anaheim was the best one yet, and I think the Toronto one's going to be even better.
4 days. It's at the Great Canadian Casino Resort, September 19th to the 22nd. And It's almost sold out as it stands now.
It is before we've announced anybody, which is completely bananas. But it's the biggest Lost Evenings yet. It's like we've gone up a size, should we say, in terms of the venue and the rest of it. So very, very excited about it. But I mean, it's funny, like, as a kid growing up, like, you quite often, and I say this with love and affection for my Canadian friends, like, North American music, it's like, they're from America, they're from Canada, same deal, like, who cares? Because I'm in England, do you know what I mean? And like, as I got older, I kind of figured out that tons of my favorite bands were Canadian, they weren't American. So whether everything from Godspeed You Black Emperor, Propaganda, Weaker Thans, Do Makes I Think, Broken Social Scene, I mean, we'll be here all day, do you know what I mean? And they're all,
yeah, it goes on.
Yeah, totally. And then in more recent years, there's so much great stuff as well. And The Dirty Nil, Comeback Kid, like, so much great stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of nice to be able to look at the bill and kind of go, it's not quite a 100% Canadian bill, but it's not far off.
That's amazing. Oh, now I'm very excited for what this is going to be, because you mentioned a band that a gentleman is in both of those bands, and whatever, we'll talk about that. We'll see.
Okay.
Mr. K. Sampson. We'll see. How many languages can you play Eulogy in now?
It depends. Am I allowed notes?
Yeah, you can have all the notes you want.
Okay, if I'm allowed notes, then I think I've done it in 28 or 29 languages now. But like, there's only 3 that I know off by heart, which is German, English, and French. The hardest ones were Cantonese and Polish.
Polish, interesting. I mean,
Cantonese. Polish. I mean, yeah, Cantonese is hard. In fact, I'd say Polish is harder. Let's say Polish is harder. And Czech and Polish. It's like, how many consonants does one person need in a single word? Like, surely this is enough already. The first time we did it in Poland, somebody sent me a translation. I spent all day. It was written out phonetically. I spent all day practicing it. I got up and I did it. And my Polish friend came up to me afterwards and he said, "I didn't understand a single word of that song."
It's the effort that counts. You did your best.
People do appreciate it, but it's like, and it's a nice way of paying respect to an audience, you know, and you say, I'm aware that I'm not necessarily in an Anglophone part of the world. And I think that's a useful and worthwhile thing to do. But, and it's fun and it's a cool challenge. I did it in Cantonese in Hong Kong in December, and we got on the local news because no one had ever tried to sing one of their songs in Cantonese in Hong Kong before. So we were on the news.
That's wild. Undefeated 10th album. What does the word undefeated mean to you?
You know, it's funny that this is not usually how I come up with album titles, but I was thinking about the record and I was kind of almost doing like word association for what it was, you know, like free association. I knew that there was a word out there somewhere that was summing up what I was trying to say with this record, and Do One was the last song that I wrote for the album, and that kind of like slotted into place, and it was like, somewhere there's a word that nails what I'm talking about. And like, the word undefeated then sort of came up after an awful lot of kind of throwing random syllables around myself, and it just sort of like, it just, you know, I really love it as a word. It kind of sums up what I'm trying to say with the record. It makes me think of things like kind of Raging Bull, do you know what I mean? And like sort of old boxers, and you know, there's something just kind of like ragged but glorious about it. I don't know, you know, it says what I want it to say. Let's say that.
Perfect. And is that the album art? That's a picture? That's your tattoo on your back?
That is. Once I came up with the album title, I was in Wellington, New Zealand, and my friend Craig is a tattoo artist there, and I literally had this revelation about the word like the night before, and I went to the tattoo studio and I got the tattoo done, and then I called my manager and my label and I said, "Here's the title for the album. You can't say no now because it's on my back." And they said, "Yeah, all right, fine."
Fair enough. Yeah, I spent some time in New Zealand last year. What a beautiful country that is.
Oh, what an incredible part of the world. Absolutely wonderful.
Just amazing. I know that you did the music video with him. He's very much in the news these days. Are you a professional wrestling fan? Like, do you know what CM Punk does?
Not as much as I should do, perhaps. Like,
you got a big weekend coming up.
Yeah, well, so here's the thing. So like, when I was younger, I was into kind of like WWF in the 90s. We're talking like Bret the Hitman Hart, like Ultimate Warrior.
Canadian.
Really?
Yeah, Bret
See,
Hart.
there we go. There we go. I had no idea. And then like The Undertaker, obviously, and Paul Bearer and all that sort of business. And like, my best friend had the toys, and we used to kind of, you know, do the wrestling
into each other.
Yeah, exactly. It was great, and I haven't really paid any attention to it since then. But lots and lots of my friends are super into wrestling, and I sort of had it kind of explained to me back in 2016, 15. When we made the music video with CM Punk, it was, I brushed up on like who he was and what he's done. I'll be honest, like I posted a thing the other day kind of saying he's doing his comeback, and loads of people were like, actually he did come back a year ago or whatever. And I was like, I don't care. Like, I mean, he's a super good dude. He's such a nice guy. And obviously I'm rooting for him in everything he does. Not least because I don't know if you know, but I actually beat him in the
You did. That's right.
Yeah. And there was no staging in that at all. It's totally that's how it went down. Yeah,
it looked very legit. Yeah, looked very much.
You know what? I'll tell you this quickly. Like basically, for the shot where I kind of quote unquote win, I had to like take him down, and we did the first couple of takes, and Punk and the director were both kind of like, "You've got to do it like a lot harder," and I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I can." And CM Punk said, "You literally can't hurt me." He was like, "I'm impossible. It is impossible for you to damage me. Just give it your all." And it was kind of terrible. I'm not a wrestler.
You're training. It's fine. You'll be ready for the rematch. And then finally, I'm just doing it. This is sort of just for a bigger feature later. I just want to talk to artists about pets. Do you have any pets?
Oh, yeah.
What do you got?
I mean, I'm hesitant to use the word pet to describe the role that my cat plays in me and my wife's life. My cat is, she's called Booty Cat. We live in a part of England where Queen Boudica was a resistance fighter against the Romans 2,000 years ago, and stick a T on the end, Booty Cat. I love a pun name for an animal. By the way, if anyone needs a pun name for an animal, I'm here for days. Do you know what I mean? I've got dog names lined up. If you want a sloth, David Hasselhoff. Do you know what I mean? Like a goat called Goatus Redding. Pun animal names is the shit. So we have Booty Cat, known as Booty, and my wife and I moved out of London in 2020, and we'll tell people that it was because of the pandemic, because of financial reasons, because of wanting to make a change from living in the city, because of wanting to have a studio in the garden, all this kind of nonsense. But the real reason that we moved house was to give our cat the life that she deserves. And she is now an outdoor cat. And we found out the other day that, which we didn't know, because she's the most cute, affectionate cat ever with us, that apparently, according to some other people on the street, she's kind of like the neighborhood tough. Like she's been kind of found like bullying other cats. And we were just like, really? And then a little bit, of course, when the neighbor tells you this, you're like, oh, I'm really sorry about that. But then secretly you're like, yeah. That's my girl.
The punk rock cat roaming the streets.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
saw the video. She saw you taking down CM Punk and was like,
there we go. There we go. Yeah. Actually, I will say the other thing about my cat is that, like, prior to 2020, when I started doing lots of live streaming during the lockdowns, my cat was not really emotionally aware of what I do for a living, and I started playing guitar and singing in our front room, and she came in and just stuck her head around the door the first time I was doing it and was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like, look, it was just like, "Could you please stop doing that? That's too noisy. I don't like it." And then that was the end of her engagement with my music career.
The harshest critics. Frank, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it as always, and we'll see you in Toronto in September.
You certainly will. I can't wait.